The black Mercedes jumped the curb at 40 miles per hour. Harold Bennett never saw it coming. One moment, he was holding his wife Margaret's hand, walking home from church the way they had every Sunday for 48 years. The next moment, he was airborne, a 70-year-old man flying through the darkness like a discarded rag. Margaret screamed. The Mercedes stopped. A man stumbled out, reeking of scotch. "Why the hell were you in my way?" He grabbed Margaret's arm, raised his hand. A voice cut through the night, calm, cold, absolute. "Touch her again, and I'll break every bone in that hand." Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. And please, like and subscribe to follow this journey to the very end. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Harold Bennett had lived 70 years on this earth, and he had learned that the best moments were always the quietest ones. Sunday evenings were his favorite. After church, after the handshakes and the hymns, he and Margaret would walk home together. 3 blocks, 15 minutes, 48 years of the same route, the same comfortable silence, the same feeling of her hand in his. Tonight was no different. "The tomatoes," Harold said, breaking the silence. "I think I'll plant them closer to the fence this year. More sunlight." Margaret squeezed his hand. "You said that last year." "Did I?" "You did, and the year before that." Harold chuckled. 70 years old, and his wife still caught every repeated thought. That was marriage, being known so completely that even your habits became familiar music. "Well," he said, "maybe this year I'll actually do it." "Maybe you will." They walked on. The streetlights were just flickering to life. The air smelled like cut grass and coming rain. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked twice, then fell silent. Harold was thinking about his garden, about the way tomato vines climbed toward sunlight, about how growth was always slower than you expected, but also more certain. He was not thinking about death. He should have been. The headlights appeared without warning. Not from the street, from the sidewalk. A black Mercedes, jumping the curb, engine roaring, moving faster than any car should move in a residential neighborhood. Harold had exactly 1 second to react. 1 second to process the impossible. A car on the sidewalk, coming straight at them. 1 second to make a choice. He shoved Margaret. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't heroic. It was instinct, the desperate need to put his body between danger and the woman he loved. Margaret stumbled sideways, hitting a mailbox, crying out in surprise and pain. Harold didn't hear her. The Mercedes hit him at 43 miles per hour. The impact was absolute. Harold felt his body leave the ground, felt the world spin, felt something in his legs snap like a dry branch. Then he was falling, tumbling through darkness, and then grass, cold, pain. Everything was pain. "Harold!" Margaret's scream seemed to come from very far away. "Harold!" He tried to answer, tried to move. His body refused. All he could do was lie there on someone's lawn, blood streaming from his head, staring up at a sky that had suddenly become the ceiling of his coffin. The Mercedes stopped. The driver's door opened. A man stumbled out, 40 years old, maybe 45, wearing a suit that cost more than Harold's first car. His hair was dark and slicked back. A gold watch glinted on his wrist. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. The eyes of someone who had been drinking for hours and had convinced himself he was fine to drive. He was not fine. He was Vincent Caldwell, real estate developer, son of a former senator, brother of the county district attorney, a man who had never heard the word no in his entire privileged life. Vincent looked at Harold lying on the ground, at the blood spreading beneath his silver hair, at the leg bent at an angle that made even drunk eyes wince. His first words were not, "I'm sorry." His first words were not, "Are you okay?" His first words were, "Why the hell were you walking in the road?" Margaret pushed herself up from the mailbox. Her arm throbbed where she'd hit the metal post. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "We weren't in the road," she said, her voice shaking. "We were on the sidewalk. You drove onto the sidewalk." "Don't tell me where I drove." Vincent's words slurred together, anger and alcohol mixing into something ugly. "I know where I drove. I drove on the road, and you people stepped out in front of me." "That's not true. Are you calling me a liar?" Vincent stepped closer, his expensive shoes crushing the grass. "Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" Margaret knelt beside Harold. His eyes were open but unfocused. Blood matted his silver hair. His chest rose and fell in shallow, ragged breaths. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Please call an ambulance. My husband is hurt. He's really hurt." "Your husband is an idiot who can't watch where he's going." Vincent pulled out his phone, but not to call for help. He aimed it at them, the camera recording. "This is going to my lawyer. You people stepped in front of my car. This is your fault. I have documentation." "We didn't. We were on the sidewalk." "Shut up." Vincent's voice hardened. "Shut up, or I'll make this so much worse for you." Harold groaned. His hand twitched, reaching for Margaret. "Maggie." "I'm here, sweetheart." Margaret grabbed his hand, holding it against her chest. "I'm right here. You're going to be okay." "My leg. Can't feel my leg." "Don't move. Just don't move. Help is coming." But help wasn't coming. Vincent was still recording, still cursing, still building a narrative that blamed the victims for his crime. Margaret looked up at him. This man who had destroyed their peaceful Sunday. This man who had shattered her husband's body. This man who stood there in his expensive suit, reeking of alcohol, more concerned with his legal defense than with the life bleeding out onto the grass. Something broke inside her. Not her spirit, her fear. "You're drunk," she said, her voice suddenly clear and hard. "You drove drunk. You hit my husband. And you're standing there blaming us?" "Watch your mouth, old woman." "I will not watch my mouth." Margaret stood up slowly, her 70-year-old knees protesting, her heart burning with a fury she hadn't felt in decades. "You almost killed him. You almost killed the man I've loved for 50 years. And you want me to watch my mouth?" Vincent stopped recording, his face twisted into something mean and petty. "You want to make this difficult? Fine." He stepped toward her. "I was trying to be nice. I was going to let insurance handle this. But you want to call me drunk? You want to accuse me of things?" "I'm telling the truth. The truth is what I say it is." Vincent grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into the flesh. "The truth is what my lawyers decide it is. The truth is what my brother, the district attorney, prosecutes. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? Let go of me. You're going to tell the police exactly what I tell you to tell them. You stepped into the road. It was dark. I couldn't see you. Do you understand?" Margaret tried to pull away. "Let go!" "Do you understand?" He shook her, hard. Her head snapped back, her gray curls flying. Harold saw it. From the ground, through a haze of pain and blood, he saw a stranger shaking his wife like a rag doll. He tried to get up. His broken legs screamed. He collapsed back onto the grass. "Get your hands off her!" "Shut up, old man. You're lucky I don't sue you for damaging my car." Vincent raised his hand, not to shake her again, to hit her. Margaret saw the blow coming, saw the gold watch glinting in the streetlight, saw the hatred in his glassy eyes. She closed her eyes and prayed. The blow never landed. A hand caught Vincent's wrist mid-swing. A strong hand. An immovable hand. "That's enough." The voice was calm, controlled, carrying the kind of authority that doesn't need volume to command attention. Vincent spun around, his face contorted with rage. "Who the hell?" He stopped. A man stood behind him. 35 years old, maybe a few years more. Short, dark brown hair with traces of gray at the temples. He wore a navy uniform, the working camouflage, green and brown digital pattern, the kind that marked him as someone who had served in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. But it wasn't the uniform that made Vincent hesitate. It was the eyes. They were calm, steady, patient in the way of someone who had faced real danger and learned that panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. And beside him, standing perfectly still, was a German shepherd. Adult, muscular, tan and black coat slicked slightly with the evening mist. His amber eyes were fixed on Vincent with an intensity that made the drunk man's bladder feel suddenly uncertain. The dog didn't growl, didn't bark, didn't move. He simply watched, waiting. "Let her go," the man in the uniform said. "Now." "This is none of your business." "You made it my business when you raised your hand to a woman." "Do you know who I am?" "I know what you are." The man's grip tightened on Vincent's wrist. "That's enough. I'm Vincent Caldwell. My brother is the district attorney. My father was Senator Caldwell. You're nothing but... I'm Lieutenant Commander Ryan Mitchell, United States Navy. And if you don't let her go in the next 3 seconds, I'm going to demonstrate exactly what nothing can do." The German shepherd's ears rotated forward. His weight shifted almost imperceptibly onto his front paws. Vincent felt it. The sudden primal awareness that he was being measured, that this dog was calculating angles and distances, that one wrong move would turn his expensive suit into a chew toy. He released Margaret's arm. Smart choice. Ryan didn't release Vincent's wrist. Not yet. "Now step back, away from both of them. You can't... 3 steps. Now." Something in Ryan's voice cut through Vincent's alcoholic haze. Not anger. Something worse. The calm certainty of a man who was stating facts, not making threats. Vincent stepped back. Once, twice, 3 times. Ryan released his wrist. "Thunder, guard!" The German shepherd moved immediately, positioning himself between Vincent and the elderly couple. Not aggressively, professionally. A living barrier that made clear any approach would have consequences. Ryan knelt beside Harold. "Sir, can you hear me?" Yes, I can hear you." Harold's voice was weak but present. "My name is Ryan. I'm going to help you. Can you tell me where it hurts?" "Everywhere." Harold tried to laugh, winced instead. "My leg. I think it's broken." "Don't try to move it. What about your head?" "Hit the ground. Seeing double a little." "That's probably a concussion. You're going to be okay, but we need to get you to a hospital." Ryan looked at Margaret. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" Margaret was crying, not from pain, from relief. From the overwhelming gratitude of having a stranger appear at the moment she needed one most. I'm okay. A little bruised. But Harold..." "I'm calling an ambulance right now." Ryan pulled out his phone. "Thunder, stay." The dog remained motionless, his eyes never leaving Vincent. Vincent had recovered some of his arrogance. Alcohol and entitlement were a powerful combination. "You're making a mistake," he said, pulling out his own phone. "A big mistake. I'm calling the police. I'm calling my brother. You're going to regret interfering." "Call whoever you want." Ryan's voice didn't change as he spoke to the 911 dispatcher. Yes, this is an emergency. I'm reporting a hit and run at the corner of Maple and 3rd in Millbrook. One victim, elderly male, possible broken leg and head trauma. The driver is still on scene. He appears to be intoxicated. I am not intoxicated, Vincent shouted. Yes, the driver is becoming aggressive. I have the situation under control for now. Please send police and EMTs. Ryan ended the call. You just lied to the police, Vincent said. That's a crime. I told them exactly what I observed. You smell like a distillery. You drove your car onto a sidewalk. You struck a pedestrian, and you were about to hit his wife. Ryan stood. If you want to claim you're sober, I'm sure the breathalyzer will clear that up. Vincent's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Do you have any idea what I can do to you? You can try to do a lot of things. Most people in your position do. Ryan's expression didn't change. But here's what's going to happen. The police are going to arrive. They're going to see an injured elderly man. They're going to smell the alcohol on your breath. They're going to take statements. And then, Mr. Caldwell, you're going to face something you've probably never faced in your entire life. What's that? Consequences. The word hung in the air. Vincent stared at Ryan, at this stranger who had appeared from nowhere and was speaking to him as if his money and connections meant nothing. My brother will bury you, Vincent said quietly. He'll bury this whole thing. Your brother can try. Ryan crouched beside Harold again, checking his pulse. But brothers can only bury so much, especially when there are witnesses. Margaret was holding Harold's hand, stroking his silver hair, murmuring words of comfort. But her eyes kept drifting to Ryan, to this young man in uniform who had stopped violence with nothing but his presence and his voice. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for helping us. Don't thank me yet, ma'am. The hard part is still coming. Sirens wailed in the distance. Thunder's ears swiveled toward the sound, then back to Vincent. And Ryan Mitchell, who had spent 15 years learning to read situations before they exploded, felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. The ambulance arrived first. 2 EMTs jumped out, a man and a woman, both moving with professional efficiency. They assessed Harold quickly. Broken tibia, possible concussion, stable vital signs. We need to transport him, the female EMT said. Ma'am, you can ride with us. Margaret hesitated, looking at Vincent, at Ryan, at the situation still unfolding. Go with your husband, Ryan told her. I'll handle things here. But, go. He needs you more than I do. Margaret squeezed Ryan's hand, a quick, fierce gesture of gratitude, then climbed into the ambulance beside Harold. The doors closed. The vehicle pulled away, sirens wailing, which left Ryan, Thunder, and Vincent Caldwell standing on a dark suburban street, waiting for the police. Vincent had recovered his phone. His fingers flew across the screen, sending texts, making his arrogance digital. My brother is already on it, he said, not looking at Ryan. DA's office is making calls. By the time the cops get here, this will be handled. Handled how? Handled. Vincent smiled. The smile of a man who had never lost a game because he'd never played by the rules. You should have walked away, soldier. This could have been simple. Old couple trips into traffic, sad accident, insurance pays. Nobody goes to jail. Nobody except the man you hit. He's not going to jail. He's going to physical therapy. Vincent laughed. Same difference to people like them. What's a few weeks in a hospital when you're 70? They were going to die soon anyway. Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not anger. Something past anger. Recognition. He had met men like Vincent Caldwell before. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, in a dozen countries where power meant permission to do whatever you wanted to whoever couldn't stop you. They all thought they were untouchable. They were usually wrong. A police cruiser pulled up. Single vehicle, one officer. Deputy Frank Morrison was 53 years old, 28 years on the force, and 4 years from a pension he desperately needed. He was also, as Ryan would soon learn, a man whose mortgage payments had been mysteriously reduced after he'd helped Vincent Caldwell avoid a DUI 3 years earlier. Morrison stepped out of his cruiser slowly. He looked at the scene. A damaged Mercedes, broken glass on the sidewalk, Vincent Caldwell standing with his arms crossed, and a Navy officer with a German Shepherd. His eyes lingered on Vincent. Something passed between them, recognition, understanding, an unspoken agreement. "Mr. Caldwell," Morrison's voice was carefully neutral. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. These pedestrians stepped into traffic. I couldn't stop in time." "I see." Morrison pulled out a notepad. "And you are?" This last was directed at Ryan. "Lieutenant Commander Ryan Mitchell, Navy SEAL. I witnessed the accident." Morrison's pen stopped moving. "Witnessed?" "I was driving past when I saw the Mercedes jump the curb. It struck the elderly man on the sidewalk. Not in the street, on the sidewalk." "That's not what Mr. Caldwell says." "Mr. Caldwell is intoxicated. I could smell the alcohol from 10 feet away." Vincent stepped forward. "That's a lie. I had one drink at dinner. I'm not talking to you, Mr. Caldwell. I'm talking to the deputy." Ryan kept his voice level. "Deputy Morrison, are you planning to administer a breathalyzer test?" Morrison's jaw tightened. "I'll decide what tests are appropriate. The driver of a vehicle involved in a collision with injuries is legally required to submit to sobriety testing in this state. I'm sure you know that." "I know my job, Commander." "Then do it." The silence that followed was heavy. Thunder sat perfectly still beside Ryan, but his eyes tracked Morrison's every movement. The dog had been trained to read human body language, to detect lies, to sense aggression, to know when a situation was about to turn dangerous. Right now, Thunder was very, very alert. Morrison made a decision. The wrong decision. "Commander Mitchell, I'm going to need you to step back from the scene. Take your dog and leave." "I'm a witness to a crime." "You're a civilian interfering with the police investigation. I'm asking you nicely to leave." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll have to arrest you for obstruction." Vincent smiled, the smug, satisfied smile of a man who knew he had purchased the right outcome. Ryan didn't smile. He looked at Morrison, really looked, the way he looked at people when he was trying to decide if they were threats or assets. What he saw was a man drowning in debt, in compromise, in small surrenders that had become a way of life. "Deputy Morrison," Ryan said quietly, "I'm going to ask you one time. Are you sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure I want you gone." "Because what you're doing right now, dismissing evidence, refusing to test a clearly intoxicated driver, threatening a witness, that's not going to disappear. I have a very good memory, and I have friends who ask questions professionally." Morrison's face hardened. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. I've spent 15 years serving this country. I've watched people die for the values we claim to represent. I'm not going to stand here and watch those values get sold for whatever Vincent Caldwell is paying you." "You son of a—" "Frank," Vincent's voice cut through, sharp with warning. "Not here. Not with him. Just get him away from the scene and we'll handle this properly." Morrison took a breath, composed himself. "Commander Mitchell, I'm not going to ask again. Leave now or I'll place you under arrest." Ryan looked at the deputy, at Vincent, at the Mercedes still sitting half on the sidewalk. Then he looked at Thunder. The dog met his eyes. 6 years of partnership had taught them to communicate without words. Thunder's message was clear. Your call. But I'm ready. Ryan made a decision. Fine. He raised his hand slightly. I'll leave. But I want you to know something, Deputy. What? Everything you do tonight is going to come back. Every choice you make, every lie you tell, every crime you cover up. Ryan stepped toward his truck. It might take days, weeks, months, but it's going to come back. And when it does, I'll be there. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. Ryan opened his truck door. Thunder jumped in. God doesn't ignore injustice, Deputy. Neither do I. He drove away. In his rearview mirror, he watched Morrison and Vincent shake hands. Watched them laugh. Watched them begin constructing a story that would blame Harold and Margaret Bennett for their own destruction. Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't over. He was going to make sure of it. The hospital was cold and bright and smelled like disinfectant and fear. Ryan found Margaret in the emergency room waiting area, sitting alone on a plastic chair, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes red from crying. Mrs. Bennett? She looked up. Relief flooded her face. You came. I said I would. Ryan sat beside her. Thunder settled at his feet, his presence immediately softening the harsh institutional atmosphere. How is your husband? In surgery. His leg. They had to put pins in it. And they're watching his head for bleeding. Margaret's voice cracked. He's 70 years old. He was just walking me home from church. He's going to be okay. You don't know that? No, Ryan admitted. I don't. But I know he's alive. And I know you're here. And I know that tomorrow we're going to make sure the man who did this faces justice. Margaret laughed bitterly. Justice? That man's brother is the district attorney. The police officer barely looked at us. They're going to say it was our fault. They're going to try. And what can we do? We're nobody. We're 70 years old. We don't have money. We don't have connections. We don't have... You have me. Margaret stopped. Looked at him. This stranger in a Navy uniform, with his calm eyes and his steady dog and his absolute certainty. Why? She asked. Why do you care? You don't know us. Ryan was quiet for a moment. He thought about his mother, dying of cancer at the hospice 3 miles away. He thought about the values she had raised him with. He thought about the men he had served with who had died believing in something larger than themselves. My mother used to say that God puts us where we're needed, he said finally. I was driving to see her when I saw your husband get hit. I could have kept driving. I could have called 911 and let someone else handle it. He met Margaret's eyes. But I was there, and that means something. At least, it does to me. Margaret reached out and took his hand. Her skin was soft, papery with age, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't... Don't think about that. Think about Harold. Think about him waking up and seeing your face. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. That's all that matters right now. Thunder shifted, resting his head on Margaret's knee. She looked down at the dog, surprised. He likes you, Ryan said. I've never had a dog. He knows when people need comfort. It's part of his training. But also, Ryan smiled slightly, he's a good judge of character. Margaret stroked Thunder's head. For the first time since the accident, something like peace crossed her face. What's his name? Thunder. Thunder. She said it softly, like a prayer. He's beautiful. He's also extremely well trained. If anyone from the Caldwell family shows up here tonight, he'll let us know. Margaret's hand stilled. You think they'd come here? I think Vincent Caldwell is worried about what Harold might say when he wakes up. and worried people do stupid things. What do we do? We wait. We watch. And tomorrow, Ryan leaned back in his chair. Tomorrow, we start fighting back. Margaret looked at him, at Thunder, at the harsh hospital lights that suddenly seemed less harsh.
I don't know how to fight people like that.
She admitted. You don't have to. Ryan closed his eyes. That's what I'm for. Harold woke up at 3 in the morning. Margaret was there, holding his hand, just as she had been for 50 years of nights, good and bad. Maggie? I'm here, sweetheart. What happened? A car hit you. You're in the hospital. Harold's eyes slowly focused. He saw the IV in his arm, the monitors beeping steadily, the cast encasing his leg. My leg. Broken, but the doctors fixed it. You're going to be okay. And you? Harold tried to lift his hand to touch her face. Are you hurt? A few bruises, nothing serious. The man, the one who... Harold's face darkened with memory. He grabbed you. He was going to hit you. Someone stopped him. Who? Margaret glanced toward the door. Ryan was standing there, Thunder at his heel. He did. Harold looked at Ryan, at the uniform, at the dog, at the quiet strength that seemed to fill the doorway. You're the one, Harold said. You stopped him. Ryan nodded. Thank you. Harold's voice cracked. My wife, if anything had happened to her, nothing happened. She's safe. But that man, Caldwell, he's connected. His family runs this town. The police made a mistake tonight. They're going to regret it. Ryan stepped into the room. Mr. Bennett, I know you're in pain. I know you're scared. But I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Every detail. Can you do that? Harold looked at Margaret. She nodded. Yes, Harold said. I can do that. And as the night stretched toward dawn, Harold Bennett told his story. The walk from church, the headlights appearing from nowhere, the impact, the drunk man's rage, the police officer who looked at them like they were the criminals. Ryan listened, made notes, asked questions. When Harold finished, Ryan stood. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. That's going to help. Help with what? With what comes next. Ryan moved toward the door. Thunder followed. Commander Mitchell, Harold called out. Ryan paused. That man, Caldwell, his family has destroyed people before. People who tried to stand up to them. Are you sure you want to do this? Ryan looked at the elderly man in the hospital bed, at the wife who had stood her ground against violence, at the 48 years of love and faith and quiet courage they represented. I've faced worse than the Caldwell family, Ryan said, and I'm still here. He left, but his words stayed behind, settling over Harold and Margaret like a blanket. For the first time since the headlights appeared from nowhere, they felt something other than fear. They felt hope. The morning brought bad news, wrapped in official language. Ryan was at his mother's bedside when his phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Margaret Bennett. The police just called. They're closing the case. They say it was our fault. Ryan looked at his mother, Eleanor Mitchell, 67 years old, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She was sleeping, her breath shallow but steady. The hospice nurses said she might have weeks, maybe days. He had come home to say goodbye. Instead, he found himself in the middle of something he couldn't walk away from. I have to go, Mom, he whispered, kissing her forehead. But I'll be back. Thunder was waiting in the truck. The German Shepherd read Ryan's expression immediately. Ears forward, body alert, ready for whatever came next. We've got work to do, boy. They drove to the hospital. Margaret was in Harold's room when Ryan arrived. She looked like she hadn't slept. Harold looked worse. His face was gray, his eyes hollow, the monitors beeping a rhythm of fragile survival. "Tell me exactly what the police said," Ryan said without preamble. Margaret handed him a document. Her hands were trembling.
They came this morning. A detective. He said they completed their investigation. He said... Her voice cracked. He said Harold and I were crossing against the light. He said we were responsible for our own injuries. He said no charges would be filed against Mr. Caldwell. Ryan read the report. It was 3 pages of carefully constructed lies. Investigation determined that the pedestrians entered the roadway without looking. Driver attempted to brake but was unable to avoid collision. No evidence of intoxication at the scene. Case closed. "This is garbage," Ryan said. "We know it's garbage, but what can we do?" Ryan looked at Harold. The old man was watching him, hope and despair battling in his eyes. "Mr. Bennett, can you tell me again exactly where you were when the car hit you?" "On the sidewalk." Harold's voice was weak but certain. "We were on the sidewalk. We've walked that route 1,000 times. We never cross until we reach the light on 4th Street. And where did the car come from?
Behind us. We heard the engine and then—" Harold closed his eyes. "I barely had time to push Margaret out of the way." "You pushed her?" "I didn't think. I knew it was going to hit one of us. I chose me." Margaret let out a small sob. She reached for Harold's hand. "You saved my life," she whispered. "You stupid, wonderful man. You saved my life." "I'd do it again," Harold said. 1,000 times. Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. 50 years of marriage, 70 years of life. And Harold Bennett's first instinct had been to protect his wife, even if it killed him. That kind of love was worth fighting for. "There's a house on the corner of Maple and 3rd, Ryan said. "I saw it when I stopped. Security camera on the porch. If that camera was pointing toward the street, it might have caught everything." Margaret's eyes widened. "Do you think—" "I think it's worth finding out." Ryan headed for the door. Thunder fell into step beside him. "Commander Mitchell," Harold called out. Ryan paused. "Why are you doing this? You don't know us. You have your own troubles. Why are you risking—" "Because it's right." Ryan met the old man's eyes. "That's reason enough." He left before Harold could respond. The house on Maple Street belonged to George Washington Carter, 75 years old, retired Marine, Vietnam veteran, a man who had lost his son in Iraq and never quite recovered from the loss. Ryan knocked on the door. Thunder sat perfectly still beside him. The door opened to reveal a tall, weathered man with white hair and suspicious eyes. "Whatever you're selling, I don't want it." "I'm not selling anything, sir. I'm Lieutenant Commander Ryan Mitchell, Navy SEAL. I need to ask you about your security camera." George's eyes dropped to Thunder, then back to Ryan. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, respect, the unspoken bond between men who had served. "You're the one who stopped that drunk from beating on those old folks." "You saw that?" "Heard about it. Whole neighborhood's talking." George stepped aside. "Come in." The house was modest but immaculate, the home of a man who valued discipline over comfort. Pictures lined the walls. A young George in Vietnam, his wedding day, his son in desert camouflage. "That's Marcus," George said, noticing Ryan's gaze. "Fallujah, 2007. IED got his convoy." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He died doing what he believed in. Same as you're doing now, I expect." George led Ryan to a computer in the corner of his living room. "My daughter installed this camera system after Marcus died. Worried about me being alone." He pulled up the footage. "Night of the accident, you said?" "Sunday, around 8:30 p.m." George typed. The screen filled with grainy footage of the street outside. And there it was, the Mercedes jumping the curb, Harold and Margaret clearly on the sidewalk, holding hands. The impact, Harold flying through the air, Vincent Caldwell stumbling out, reeking of arrogance even in silent video. "My God," George whispered. "That bastard drove right onto the sidewalk." "Can you see his face clearly?" "Clear enough." "And the license plate," George pointed. "Right there, black Mercedes, Virginia plate. That's Vincent Caldwell's car. I've seen it around town for years." "I need a copy of this footage." "You can have the original." George was already reaching for a flash drive. "And I'll testify. In court, on camera, wherever you need me." "You understand what you're getting into. The Caldwells have a lot of influence in this town." George's face hardened. Something ancient and fierce flickered in his eyes. "My son died fighting for this country. He died believing in justice. You think I'm going to let some rich drunk and his corrupt brother spit on that?" George handed Ryan the flash drive. "Do what you need to do. I've got your back." Ryan felt the weight of the drive in his hand. Such a small thing, such massive consequences. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. Just nail that son of a bitch." Ryan made copies of the footage before he did anything else. 3 copies. 1 in a secure cloud server. 1 on a drive he kept with him. 1 mailed to a friend in Virginia Beach, with instructions to release it if anything happened to him. Then he made a phone call. Patricia Reyes answered on the second ring. "Ryan Mitchell. I haven't heard that voice in 3 years." Her tone was warm, but cautious. "What's wrong?" "What makes you think something's wrong?" "You're calling me. You never call unless something's wrong." Ryan smiled, despite himself. Patricia Reyes was FBI, Financial Crimes Division. They had worked together on a joint operation in Colombia, breaking up a drug money laundering network. She was brilliant, tenacious, and absolutely incorruptible. "I need a favor." "Of course you do." "I need you to look into someone. Vincent Caldwell, real estate developer in Millbrook, Virginia. His brother is the county DA." "What kind of trouble?" "Hit and run, assault, police cover-up, and I suspect there's more." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Ryan could hear her typing. "Vincent Caldwell, Caldwell Development Corporation. Interesting." More typing. "Interesting. What?" "His company has been flagged before. Suspected money laundering. We couldn't make it stick. The investigation kept getting shut down." "Shut down by whom?" "Officially, budget constraints. Unofficially," Patricia's voice dropped, "someone with a lot of pull wanted it buried. His brother is a DA. His brother is connected to people higher than county-level politics." Patricia paused. "Ryan, what did you walk into?" "An elderly couple got hit by a drunk driver. The driver is connected. The cops are covering for him. I have video evidence that proves everything." "Then why are you calling me instead of releasing it?" "Because I think this is bigger than a hit and run. I think the Caldwells have been getting away with things for years. And I think this might be the thread that unravels all of it." Patricia was silent for a long moment. "Send me what you have. I'll see what I can find." "Thank you, Patricia." "Don't thank me yet. If this goes where I think it might, you're going to need more than one friend in a federal agency." She hung up. Ryan looked at Thunder. The dog was watching him, waiting. "This is going to get ugly, boy." Thunder's tail wagged once. He didn't seem worried. The first sign of retaliation came the next morning. Ryan arrived at the hospice to find his mother's room empty. Not empty as in she was getting treatment. Empty as in cleared out. Bed stripped, personal items boxed. His mother nowhere to be found. His blood ran cold. "Excuse me," he grabbed a passing nurse. Eleanor Mitchell, room 214. Where is she? The nurse looked uncomfortable. She was transferred last night. Transferred? Where? Another facility. I don't have the details. I'm her son. I'm listed as her emergency contact. No one called me. Sir, I'm sorry, but these decisions are made by administration. Get me administration. Now. 15 minutes later, Ryan was standing in the hospice director's office, trying very hard not to put his fist through the wall. The transfer was for insurance reasons, the director said smoothly. He was a thin man with thin lips and thin excuses. Your mother's policy changed coverage tiers. We're no longer an approved facility. That's a lie. I beg your pardon? I manage my mother's insurance. The policy hasn't changed. The coverage hasn't changed. Someone told you to move her. The director's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Ryan leaned forward. Where is my mother? Sunridge Care Center. It's about 2 hours away. 2 hours? I understand it's inconvenient, but... Inconvenient? My mother is dying. She has weeks left, maybe days. And you moved her 2 hours away so I can't be with her? The director started to respond. Don't. Ryan's voice dropped to the tone he used when questioning hostile prisoners. Don't try to justify it. Don't try to explain. Just know this. I know why you did it. And I know who told you to do it. I don't know what you're talking about. The Caldwells. Ryan watched the man flinch. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And when this is over, when they're facing charges and their empire is burning, I'm going to remember that you helped them try to hurt a dying woman. He left before he did something he'd regret. Thunder was waiting in the truck. The dog sensed something wrong immediately, pressing against Ryan's leg as he slid behind the wheel. They went after my mother, Ryan said quietly. They moved her to keep me away. Thunder whined softly. They think that's going to stop me. Ryan started the engine. They're wrong. He drove 2 hours to Sunridge Care Center. His mother was there, alive, confused, frightened. She didn't understand why she'd been moved. She didn't understand why Ryan looked so angry. What's happening? She asked, her voice thin and fragile. Why am I here? It's going to be okay, Mom. Ryan held her hand. I'm going to fix this. You look tired, sweetheart. Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine. You always say you're fine. Eleanor's eyes, still sharp despite the cancer eating her from the inside, studied his face. What are you involved in? Nothing I can't handle. Ryan, she squeezed his hand with surprising strength. I know you. I raised you. I know when you're carrying something heavy. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then he told her. Everything. The elderly couple, the drunk driver, the police cover-up, the video evidence, the powerful family trying to bury the truth. When he finished, Eleanor was crying. That poor couple, after all those years of marriage, to have something like that happen. They're fighters, both of them. Like you. Eleanor touched his face. Always running toward trouble, ever since you were a little boy. Someone has to. Yes, but it doesn't always have to be you. Mom. I know. You can't help it. It's who you are. She smiled through her tears. Just promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back. I always come back. That's what your father said. Before he didn't. The words hung between them, the old wound that had never fully healed. Ryan's father had been Navy too, had died in a training accident when Ryan was 12. I'm not Dad, Ryan said softly. No, you're not. Eleanor's eyes closed. But you're still my son, and I'm still afraid for you." Ryan stayed until she fell asleep. Then he drove back to Millbrook, his hands tight on the wheel, his mind racing through possibilities. The Caldwells wanted a war. They were going to get one. Ryan's truck was vandalized that night. He returned to his motel to find the tires slashed, the windows smashed, a note on the windshield. "Leave town, or things get worse." Thunder growled at the damage, his hackles rising. Ryan read the note twice. Then he crumpled it up and threw it away. "You think that scares me?" he said aloud, knowing there might be ears nearby. "I've been shot at in 6 countries. I've watched friends die in my arms. You think some broken glass is going to make me run?" He called a tow truck, got the tires replaced, had the windows fixed. Then he went to see Harold and Margaret. "They're escalating," he told them. "They moved my mother. They vandalized my truck. They're trying to pressure me into leaving." Margaret's face went pale. "Maybe you should. Maybe this isn't worth—" "They went after my mother." Ryan's voice was quiet, but carrying an edge that made Thunder's ears flatten. "A dying woman who never hurt anyone. They moved her 2 hours away so I couldn't be with her. That's monstrous." "That's the Caldwell family." Ryan sat down heavily. "They think they can do whatever they want, to whoever they want. They've been doing it for years, decades probably." "So what do we do?" "We keep going. I have the video evidence. I have a contact in the FBI who's digging into their finances. And I have witnesses who are willing to testify." "Who?" "George Carter, the Marine who lives on the corner. He saw everything on his security camera. He's willing to go public." Harold struggled to sit up straighter. His leg was in a cast, his ribs wrapped, but something fierce burned in his eyes. "What about us?" "What about you?" "We're witnesses too. We lived it." Harold looked at Margaret. "Maggie, if there's a chance to stop these people, to make sure they can't hurt anyone else, we have to take it." "Harold, you're 70 years old with a broken leg. I'm 70 years old with a broken leg and 50 years of marriage, and a lifetime of believing that truth matters." Harold's voice grew stronger with each word. "If I don't stand up now, what was any of it for?" Margaret stared at her husband, at the silver-haired man she had loved since she was 22 years old, at the quiet courage that had always been there, hidden beneath the gentle exterior. "You impossible man," she whispered. "You wonderful, impossible man." "Is that a yes?" Margaret took his hand, looked at Ryan. "It's a yes." Ryan's phone rang at midnight. Patricia Reyes. "I found something," she said without preamble. "Something big." "Tell me." "Vincent Caldwell's real estate company has been laundering money for a decade. Drug money, mostly. Some offshore accounts connected to organized crime. His brother has been suppressing investigations from the DA's office." "Can you prove it?" "With what I have now? Probably not. It's all circumstantial." Patricia paused. "But if we could get someone to turn, someone inside the organization who knows where the bodies are buried, we could bring down the whole thing." "Who would turn against the Caldwells?" "That's the question." Patricia's voice dropped. "But I'll tell you who might. Deputy Frank Morrison." "The cop who covered up the hit and run?" "The same. He's been on the Caldwell payroll for years, but it looks like he's getting nervous. His payments have stopped. His pension is being questioned. Someone's hanging him out to dry. They're going to make him the fall guy." "Exactly. If you could get to him first, show him the evidence, make him understand he's being sacrificed, he might flip." "That's a big risk." "So is everything you're doing," Patricia sighed. "Ryan, I have to ask, why are you so invested in this? You came home to see your mother. This isn't your fight." Ryan thought about Harold and Margaret, about their quiet Sunday walk destroyed by arrogance and alcohol, about his mother, moved away from him in the final weeks of her life. "It became my fight," he said. "The moment I saw that man raise his hand to an old woman." That's not a strategy. That's a conviction. Sometimes conviction is the only strategy that matters. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Be careful, Ryan. The Caldwells play for keeps." "So do I." He hung up. Thunder was watching him, amber eyes glowing in the darkness. "Tomorrow," Ryan said, "we go hunting." The dog's tail wagged. He understood. Deputy Frank Morrison lived in a modest house on the outskirts of town. Ryan arrived at dawn, Thunder at his side. He parked across the street and waited. At 6:47 a.m., Morrison emerged in uniform, coffee in hand, heading for his patrol car. Ryan stepped out of his truck. "Deputy Morrison." Morrison spun around, hand moving to his weapon. Then he recognized Ryan, and his face hardened. "You! I told you to leave town. And I told you that what you did was going to come back." Ryan walked forward slowly. Thunder moved with him. "It's coming back now. You're trespassing. I'm standing on a public street." Ryan stopped 10 feet away. "I have evidence, video evidence. It shows the Caldwell car jumping the curb, shows the impact, shows you arriving and refusing to administer a breathalyzer." Morrison's face went pale. "It also shows you shaking Vincent Caldwell's hand after you told me to leave." "That doesn't mean anything. It means conspiracy, cover-up, corruption of your oath." Ryan held up the flash drive. "But that's not why I'm here." "Then why?" "Because I know what's coming for you. The Caldwells are cutting loose. They're going to blame everything on you. The cover-up, the missing evidence, all of it. You're going to be the sacrifice that lets them walk free." Morrison's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know you haven't received a payment from them in 3 weeks. I know your pension review was moved up without explanation. I know they're already building a narrative that makes you the villain. How do you—" "I have friends who dig into things. They've been digging into the Caldwells for a while now." Ryan stepped closer. "Here's the question, Deputy. Do you want to go down alone, or do you want to help bring them down with you?" Morrison stared at him. Fear and calculation warred in his eyes. "You're asking me to betray. I'm asking you to tell the truth. I'm asking you to remember why you became a cop. I'm asking you to think about what happens to you when the Caldwells are done using you." Ryan's voice softened. "You have a family, don't you? Kids? Grandkids? Don't bring my family into this. The Caldwells already have. The minute you started covering for them, you brought your family into this." Ryan held out a business card. "This is an FBI contact. Financial crimes. They're building a case. They need witnesses. And if I talk to them, then maybe you get a deal. Maybe you keep your pension. Maybe you don't spend the next 10 years in federal prison." Morrison took the card. His hand was shaking. "I need to think about this." "Don't think too long. The Caldwells are already moving." Ryan turned to leave. "Remember who threw you away first, Deputy. It wasn't me." He walked back to his truck. Thunder jumped in. As they drove away, Ryan watched Morrison in the rearview mirror. A man standing alone on his lawn, holding a business card that could change everything. Now, all he could do was wait, and pray that conscience was stronger than fear. Deputy Frank Morrison called at 3 in the morning. Ryan was at his mother's bedside, having driven 2 hours each way for the 3rd time that week, when his phone lit up with an unknown number. "I'm in," Morrison said without preamble. His voice was hoarse, raw with sleeplessness and fear. "They're going to destroy me. I saw the paperwork today. They're setting me up for everything." "What kind of paperwork?" Internal affairs investigation. Launched by the DA's office. They're claiming I falsified reports, accepted bribes, covered up evidence." Morrison laughed bitterly. "All true, of course. But they're the ones who told me to do it." "And now they're cutting you loose." "Like I was nothing. Like I didn't risk my career for them for 4 years." Morrison's voice cracked. "I have grandchildren, Mitchell. I have a pension that's supposed to pay for their college. And these people are going to take everything because I know too much." Ryan looked at his mother, sleeping peacefully despite the machines keeping her alive. "Where are you now?" "My car, outside the Caldwell Development Building. I was going to confront Vincent, but don't. Don't do anything stupid. Too late for that. I've been doing stupid things for 4 years. Listen to me carefully." Ryan's voice shifted into the calm, commanding tone he used when lives were on the line. "You need to get somewhere safe. Somewhere the Caldwells can't find you. Can you do that?" "I don't know." "Think, Morrison. You've been a cop for 30 years. Where do criminals hide when they're afraid?" A long pause. "My sister's place. She lives in West Virginia. Off-grid, mostly. Go there, tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going, and call the FBI contact I gave you from a burner phone." "You really think they can protect me?" "I think they're your only chance." Ryan paused. "But Morrison, you need to give them everything. Every cover-up, every payment, every conversation. Hold nothing back." "If I do that, I go to prison." "If you don't do that, you go to a grave. The Caldwells don't leave loose ends." Silence on the line. Then, "I never wanted any of this. I was just trying to pay my bills. My wife's medical treatments. The insurance wouldn't cover everything. And then Vincent offered, 'I don't need your confession, deputy. Save it for the FBI.' Ryan softened his voice. "But I understand. Good people make bad choices when they're desperate. What matters is what you do next. What if it's not enough? Then at least you'll know you tried." Morrison hung up. Ryan sat in the quiet hospice room, listening to his mother breathe. Thunder lay at his feet, alert even in rest. "It's happening, boy," Ryan murmured. "The walls are starting to crack." Thunder's tail thumped once against the floor. The next 72 hours were chaos. Morrison vanished, exactly as Ryan had instructed. His disappearance sent shockwaves through the Millbrook Police Department. Suddenly, the man they had been preparing to sacrifice was gone, along with whatever evidence he had been collecting. Vincent Caldwell's reaction was immediate and unhinged. "Find him!" he screamed at his brother Michael during a call that Patricia's FBI contacts had been monitoring. "Find him and fix this!" "I'm trying, Vincent. He's not at his house. His phone is off. His car—" "I don't care about his car. I care about what he knows." "He doesn't know everything." "He knows enough. Enough to connect us to the money. Enough to prove we've been buying cops for years." Vincent's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "If he talks, we lose everything." "Then maybe we should—" "Don't say it on the phone." A pause. "Come to my office. And bring the other files." Patricia called Ryan an hour later. "They're panicking," she said, "which means they're going to do something stupid." "What kind of stupid?" "The kind that involves making witnesses disappear." Patricia's voice was grim. "Ryan, you need to watch your back. The Bennetts, too." "I've been watching." "Watch harder. These people have resources, private security, off-the-books personnel who handle problems." She hesitated. "I'm sending backup. 2 agents I trust. They'll be in Millbrook by tonight." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This is my job." Patricia paused. "But Ryan, be careful. You've already made yourself a target. If they decide you're more trouble than you're worth, then they'll learn what a real threat looks like." He hung up and called Margaret. I need you and Harold to pack a bag." "What? Why?" "Things are escalating. The man who covered up the accident has flipped. The Caldwells are getting desperate." Margaret's voice trembled. "Desperate how?" "Desperate enough to do something we can't predict. I want you somewhere safe until this is over." "Harold can barely walk." "I know, but he can sit in a car and he can stay hidden. Can you do that for me?" A long pause. Then, "Where would we go?" "George Carter has a cabin in the mountains. He offered it to me last week. No one knows about it except him." "The Marine? The one with the security camera?" "The same. He's a good man. He'll watch over you." Margaret was crying now. Ryan could hear it in her breath. "I'm 70 years old," she said. "I thought our running days were over. I thought we could just—" "I know, and I'm sorry, but I need you alive to testify. I need Harold alive to tell his story. And right now, alive means hidden." "How long?" "Days, maybe a week. The FBI is moving. When they do, the Caldwells won't be able to hurt anyone." "And if they move first?" "They won't. I won't let them." Margaret took a shaky breath. "You're a good man, Commander Mitchell. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. You're a good man." "Get Harold ready. I'll be there in an hour." Ryan arrived at the hospital to find Harold dressed and sitting in a wheelchair, his broken leg extended in front of him, his face set with grim determination. "I'm not running," Harold said as soon as Ryan entered. "I've never run from anything in my life." "You're not running. You're repositioning." "Don't use military talk on me. I'm a high school teacher. I know what words mean." "Then you know that sometimes the smartest move is to step back and let the enemy expose themselves." Ryan crouched beside the wheelchair. "Mr. Bennett, these people tried to kill you. They covered up what they did. And now they're cornered, which makes them more dangerous than ever." "So, I should hide while you fight my battle?" "I should let you come with me into a war zone?" Ryan shook his head. "You're 70 years old with a broken leg. You're brave, but you're not equipped for this." Harold grabbed Ryan's arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. "I didn't survive that car so I could watch from the sidelines. I survived because God wanted me to be part of this, to bear witness, to stand up. You will stand up. In court, in front of cameras, telling the world exactly what Vincent Caldwell did." Ryan met his eyes. "But you can only do that if you're alive. Do you understand?" Harold held his gaze for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged. "I hate this. I know. I hate being old and weak and—" "You're not weak." Ryan stood. "You pushed your wife out of the path of a speeding car. You took the hit yourself. That's not weakness. That's the opposite of weakness." Harold wiped his eyes. "You're good at this, making people feel better about their own helplessness. I'm good at recognizing strength in unexpected places." Ryan gripped the wheelchair handles. "Now let's get you to safety." Thunder walked beside them, his presence calming the nurses and patients they passed. The German shepherd seemed to understand the gravity of what was happening. His amber eyes were alert, his body language protective. Margaret was waiting at the hospital entrance, 2 small bags at her feet. She looked fragile in the morning light, but her jaw was set. "I'm not happy about this," she said. "You don't have to be happy. You just have to be safe." George Carter's truck was idling at the curb. The old Marine stepped out when he saw them approach. "Everything's ready at the cabin," George said. "Supplies for a week. Satellite phone in case of emergency. And this." He handed Ryan a shotgun. "For anything that comes up unexpected." "I can't shoot," Harold said. "I can," Margaret replied, taking the weapon. "Daddy taught me when I was 12. Everyone stared at her. "What? A woman should know how to protect herself." George laughed. the first genuine laugh Ryan had heard from him. "I like her." "Just get them safe," Ryan said. "And watch the roads. Anyone follows you." "Son, I ran convoys through the Mekong Delta. I think I can handle a back road in Virginia." Ryan helped Harold into the truck, then turned to Margaret. "I'll call when it's over." "And if you don't call?" "Then George knows what to do. The evidence is already with the FBI. Even if something happens to me, the truth comes out." Margaret reached up and touched his face. Her hand was soft, trembling. "Come back, Commander, for that mother of yours, for all the good you still have to do." "I always come back." The truck pulled away. Ryan watched until it disappeared around the corner. Then he turned to Thunder. "Now we go hunting." The Caldwell Development Building was a temple to excess. 12 stories of glass and steel in a town that didn't need 12 stories of anything. Ryan didn't go through the front door. He had spent 2 days studying the building, its security systems, its routines. He knew that Vincent Caldwell worked late on Thursdays, usually alone. He knew the cleaning crew left at 8. He knew the security guard took a smoke break at 9:15. At 9:20, Ryan was in the elevator. Thunder stood beside him, perfectly still, perfectly calm. The dog had done infiltrations before, in buildings far more dangerous than this one. The elevator opened on the top floor. Vincent Caldwell's office was at the end of the hall, light spilling through the gap beneath the door. Ryan could hear voices. Vincent and someone else. A woman. He moved silently down the corridor. Thunder's paws made no sound on the carpet. At the door, Ryan paused. Listened. "Can't just disappear," the woman was saying. "The FBI is already asking questions." "The FBI asks questions about everything. It doesn't mean they have anything." "They have Morrison." "Morrison is a coward who's running scared. His testimony is worthless without documentation." "And if he has documentation?" Silence. "Then we handle it the way we've always handled problems." "Vincent, I'm your lawyer. I can't be part of—" "You've been part of this for 10 years, Caroline. Don't pretend you have a conscience now." Ryan had heard enough. He pushed the door open. Vincent Caldwell spun around, his face going white. The woman beside him, 50s, expensive suit, exactly what a corrupt lawyer looked like, dropped her briefcase. "Who the hell? How did you get in here?" Ryan didn't answer. He walked into the office, Thunder at his heel. "Security!" Vincent shouted. "Security!" "Your security guard is having a cigarette. He'll be another few minutes." Ryan stopped 10 feet from Vincent. "We need to talk. I'm calling the police." "Please do. Make sure to mention that you're under federal investigation for money laundering, that you ran over an elderly man while drunk, and that you've been bribing local officials for years." Ryan tilted his head. "I'm sure that will go well." Vincent's hand froze over his phone. "What do you want?" "The truth. On record. A confession that you hit Harold Bennett with your car while intoxicated, that you attempted to assault his wife, that you covered it up with help from local police." "You're insane." "Probably, but I'm also very patient." Ryan reached into his jacket and pulled out a tablet. "This is the security footage from the night of the accident. It shows everything. Your car jumping the curb, the impact, you stumbling out drunk, you grabbing Margaret Bennett and raising your hand to hit her." Vincent's face cycled through emotions: shock, fear, rage. "That footage is authentic, verified by 3 independent experts, already in the hands of the FBI, the State Attorney General, and 2 major news networks who are very interested in running a story about a wealthy family who thinks they're above the law." The lawyer, Caroline, spoke up. "Mr. Caldwell,
I advise you not to say anything."
"Shut up." Vincent's voice was cold. He stared at Ryan. "What do you really want? Money? Everyone wants money." "I want justice." "Justice." Vincent laughed. "Do you know what justice is? Justice is what people with power decide it is. Justice is for people who can afford lawyers and judges and outcomes. Justice has never existed for people like the Bennetts, old, poor, invisible. Then maybe it's time to change that. You can't change anything. You're one man with a dog." Ryan smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "I'm one man who has spent 15 years learning how to take down enemies much bigger than you. I'm one man who has friends in federal agencies, in media outlets, in places you can't buy or threaten. And I'm one man who has absolutely nothing left to lose." "Everyone has something to lose." "My mother is dying, slowly, painfully. You already moved her away from me. I know that was you. You vandalized my truck, threatened my safety, tried to intimidate me at every turn." Ryan stepped closer. "What else can you take? My life? Better men than you have tried." Vincent's eyes flickered to thunder. The dog hadn't moved, but his attention was absolute. "Call off your dog." "Why? He's not doing anything. He's just watching." Ryan paused. "He's very good at watching. Trained to detect lies, to read body language, to know when someone is about to make a very bad decision." "I want you out of my building." "I want you to confess." Seems like neither of us is getting what we want tonight. Ryan set the tablet on Vincent's desk. "But here's the difference between us, Mr. Caldwell. You need to win this to keep everything. I only need to not lose." "What does that mean?" "It means the evidence is already out there. It means the FBI is already building a case. It means your brother's career is already over, whether he knows it or not." Ryan headed for the door. "All I have to do is stay alive long enough to watch it happen." "And if you don't stay alive?" Ryan paused at the threshold, looked back. "Then you better pray you get to me before I get to you, because if anything happens to me, everything I have goes public. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence I've collected." He smiled coldly, "including the recordings I made tonight." Vincent's face went gray. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Ryan pulled out his phone, showed the screen. A recording app, running for the past 15 minutes. "Every word, Mr. Caldwell. Every threat. Every admission. All of it now backed up to 3 secure servers." Caroline put her head in her hands. "We're finished," she murmured. "We're completely finished." Ryan left without another word. Thunder followed, his tail held high, the posture of a dog who knew they had just won a battle. The Caldwells made their move 2 nights later. Ryan was driving to the hospice when he noticed the headlights following him. 2 cars, keeping perfect distance. "We've got company, Thunder." The dog raised his head, instantly alert. Ryan didn't speed up, didn't try to lose them. He pulled into a rest stop, public, well-lit, with security cameras covering every angle. The 2 cars pulled in behind him. 4 men got out. Private security types, black clothing, hard faces, military bearings. Not cops, not amateurs. The kind of men who made problems disappear. Ryan stepped out of his truck, leaving the door open. Thunder jumped down beside him. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The lead man, 30s, buzz cut, neck tattoos that screamed prison time, stepped forward. "Commander Mitchell, Mr. Caldwell would like to have a conversation." "We already had a conversation. It didn't go well for him." "This is a different kind of conversation. The kind that happens in a dark place where no one can hear?" The man smiled. "Something like that." Ryan calculated distances. 4 men, spread in a loose semicircle. All bigger than him. All armed. He could see the bulges under their jackets. But they didn't know thunder. "Here's the problem," Ryan said conversationally. "I'm recording this entire encounter on a device that streams directly to an FBI server. You so much as touch me, and you'll have federal agents crawling all over you before sunrise." The man hesitated, glanced at his companions. "And if you're thinking about taking my phone, that won't help. The device is sewn into my jacket, has its own battery, its own signal." This wasn't entirely true, but they didn't know that. "Plus there's thunder." "Your dog?" "My partner." Ryan's voice hardened. 75 pounds of muscle, trained to protect his handler against multiple attackers. "You might take me down, but at least one of you is going to the hospital first. Maybe 2. And then you'll have assault charges on top of whatever Mr. Caldwell is paying you." The men exchanged glances. The calculation was visible on their faces. Risk versus reward. Injury versus payment. "Tell your boss something for me," Ryan said. "Tell him it's over. The FBI has everything. Morrison is cooperating. The news story breaks tomorrow morning." He smiled. "By this time next week, Vincent Caldwell will be in handcuffs, and everyone who helped him will be explaining to federal prosecutors why they shouldn't spend the next decade in prison." "You're lying. Check the news in 12 hours, then tell me if I'm lying." Ryan opened his truck door. Thunder jumped in. "Oh, and gentlemen, I have your license plates. Your faces are on the security cameras, and I'll be filing a report with local police, the honest ones, about this encounter." He paused. "If I were you, I'd start thinking about my own exit strategy." He drove away. In his rearview mirror, he watched the 4 men standing in the rest stop parking lot, looking lost. His phone buzzed. "Patricia." "It's happening tomorrow," she said. "We have enough. The arrests start at 6 a.m. "All of them?" "Vincent, Michael, Caroline the lawyer, 6 police officers, including Deputy Morrison's supervisor." Patricia's voice held grim satisfaction. "And based on what Morrison gave us, probably 3 more by end of week." "What about Morrison?" "Cooperation agreement. He'll serve time, but less than he deserves. It was the only way to get him to flip completely." Ryan thought about Morrison, a man who had made terrible choices for understandable reasons. A man who had finally found the courage to do the right thing, even if it was too late. And the Bennetts? They can come home. It's safe now. Ryan exhaled a breath he hadn't known he was holding. "Thank you, Patricia." "Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You did the hard part." "I just showed up." "Sometimes showing up is the hardest part of all." She hung up. Ryan drove through the night, heading for his mother's hospice. Tomorrow, the world would change. Tonight, he just wanted to hold his mother's hand. The arrests began at 6:07 a.m. Ryan watched from his truck, parked across the street from the Caldwell mansion, as 3 black SUVs rolled up the circular driveway. FBI agents in tactical gear moved with coordinated precision, the choreography of justice that he had witnessed in a dozen countries, now playing out in a quiet Virginia suburb. Vincent Caldwell was still in his robe when they brought him out. The man who had run down an elderly couple, who had tried to beat a 70-year-old woman, who had built an empire on corruption and cruelty. He stumbled on his own front steps, his face slack with disbelief. "This is a mistake," he shouted as they cuffed him. "Do you know who I am? My brother is the district attorney." "Your brother is currently being arrested at his home," the lead agent replied calmly. "Sir, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." Vincent's eyes swept the street, desperate, searching for someone to save him. They landed on Ryan. For a moment, the 2 men stared at each other. Vincent's face contorted with rage, with hatred, with the desperate fury of a man who had finally run out of people to buy. "You!" Vincent screamed. "You did this! I'll kill you! I'll—" The agents shoved him into the SUV. The door slammed shut. Ryan didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't feel the satisfaction he had expected. He just felt tired. Thunder pressed against his leg, sensing the complex emotions swirling in his handler's chest. "It's done, boy," Ryan murmured. "It's finally done." His phone buzzed. Margaret. "We saw it on the news," she said, her voice trembling. "They're really arresting them? All of them?" "All of them. Vincent, Michael, the corrupt cops, everyone involved." "I can't believe it. After everything. After all those years of them getting away with—" She started crying. "Harold wants to talk to you." A shuffling sound. Then Harold's voice, stronger than Ryan had heard it since the accident. "Commander Mitchell. Mr. Bennett. I don't know how to thank you. What you've done for us, for this whole town. You don't need to thank me. You need to get well so you can testify." "Oh, I'll testify." Harold's voice carried a fierce determination. "I'll tell everyone exactly what happened, what they did, what they tried to cover up." "Good. The prosecutors will be in touch. But first," Ryan paused. "First, go home. Sleep in your own bed. Walk past that corner where it happened and know that you won." "We won," Harold corrected. "All of us. Together." Ryan ended the call. He sat in his truck for a long moment, watching the FBI finish their work at the Caldwell mansion. Evidence teams were arriving now, ready to tear apart the empire that Vincent had built on lies and blood. Then he drove to the hospice. His mother was waiting. Eleanor Mitchell was having a good day. The nurses said those were rare now, days when the pain receded enough for her to sit up, to talk clearly, to be herself instead of the disease. Ryan found her propped up in bed, watching the news on the small television in her room. "You're famous," she said as he entered. The screen showed Vincent Caldwell being led away in handcuffs. The headline read, "Prominent developer arrested in corruption scandal. Navy SEAL credited with exposing truth." "I'm not famous." "The news says a Navy SEAL helped bring down the Caldwell family. They don't say your name, but I know." Eleanor smiled weakly. "A mother always knows." Ryan sat beside her bed. Thunder settled at his feet, his head resting near Eleanor's hand. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, but proud." Eleanor reached out and touched his face. "You did a good thing, Ryan. Those people, the Bennetts, they would have been destroyed without you. They were strong enough to fight for themselves. You stayed." Eleanor's eyes were bright despite her exhaustion. "When everyone else walked away, you stayed. That's not nothing. That's everything." Ryan felt his throat tighten. He had faced enemy fire without flinching. He had watched friends die without breaking. But his mother's words hit something deep and vulnerable that all his training couldn't protect. "I should have been here more," he said quietly. "Instead of chasing, don't." Eleanor's grip on his hand was surprisingly firm. "Don't apologize for being who you are. I raised you to stand up for what's right. I didn't expect you to stop doing that just because I got sick." "Mom." "I'm dying, Ryan. We both know that. Weeks, days, maybe hours, it doesn't matter." She met his eyes. "What matters is that you spent the time we had left being the man I raised. That's the only goodbye gift I need." Ryan bowed his head. Tears fell on their joined hands. "I don't want you to go. Nobody ever does." Eleanor stroked his hair the way she had when he was a child. "But that's not how this works. We don't get to choose our endings. We only get to choose what we do with the time before them." They sat in silence for a while. Thunder's tail thumped softly against the floor, as if he understood that some moments needed no words. "Tell me about the Bennetts," Eleanor finally said. "The couple you saved." So Ryan told her about Harold and Margaret's 50-year love story, about the Sunday walks, about Harold pushing his wife out of the path of the car, choosing her life over his own without hesitation. Eleanor listened, smiling. "That's what it's supposed to be," she said. "Love, not the movies and the songs. Just two people choosing each other every day, even when it costs everything." "Did you have that? With Dad?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "Your father was a complicated man, brave and flawed, and sometimes cruel without meaning to be. But yes, in the end, I had that. He chose me, and I chose him. And out of that choice came you. I miss him." "So do I. Every day." Eleanor closed her eyes. "But he's waiting, somewhere on the other side of all this pain. And when I get there, I'm going to give him such a lecture about leaving us too soon." Ryan laughed despite his tears. "He always said you could outtalk anyone." "I could. I can. I will." Eleanor's voice was fading, exhaustion claiming her. "Stay a while? Just until I fall asleep?" "I'll stay as long as you need." "Good." She squeezed his hand one last time. "Because I need you, Ryan. I've always needed you, even when I couldn't say it." She drifted off. Ryan stayed. Thunder kept watch at his feet. Outside, the world moved on. Arrests and headlines and the machinery of justice grinding forward. But in this small room, none of that mattered. What mattered was a mother's hand in her son's. What mattered was being present for the people who needed you. What mattered was love. The news cycle exploded over the next 48 hours. Every network ran the story. Caldwell Empire crumbles. Decades of corruption exposed. Local officials implicated in cover-up scheme. Elderly couple nearly killed by drunk driver. Navy SEAL intervenes. The footage from George Carter's security camera played on every channel. Millions of people watched Vincent Caldwell's Mercedes jump the curb. Watched Harold Bennett fly through the air. Watched the drunk driver stumble out and attack a 70-year-old woman. Public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Protests formed outside the county courthouse. Demands for accountability filled social media. Journalists descended on Millbrook like locusts, hunting for anyone willing to talk. Ryan refused all interviews. "I'm not the story," he told Patricia when she asked why. "The Bennetts are the story. The corruption is the story. I'm just a guy who was in the right place at the right time. That's not how the public sees it. Then the public sees it wrong." But the Bennetts did talk. Harold gave his first interview from his wheelchair, Margaret standing beside him, their hands clasped the way they had been for 50 years. The footage went viral within hours. "We were walking home from church," Harold said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "The same walk we've taken every Sunday since 1976, and in one moment, everything changed." "Were you scared?" the reporter asked. "Terrified, but not for myself. For Maggie." Harold looked at his wife. "When I saw those headlights coming, all I could think was, I have to get her out of the way. I have to protect her." "And you pushed her." "I didn't think about it. After 50 years, she's not separate from me. Protecting her is the same as protecting myself." Margaret was crying now, but she managed to speak. "When that man grabbed me, when he raised his hand, I thought it was over. I thought we'd survive the crash just to die at the hands of a monster." She took a shaky breath.
And then Commander Mitchell appeared, out of nowhere, like an angel.
Can you describe what happened?
He walked toward us so calmly. He wasn't afraid. He just said, "That's enough." And the whole world stopped.
Margaret wiped her eyes.
I've never seen anything like it.
One man standing against evil, and evil backed down. The interview was watched by over 20 million people. Ryan watched it alone in his truck, Thunder beside him. "They're making me sound like something I'm not," he said to the dog. Thunder tilted his head as if disagreeing. "I'm not a hero. I couldn't walk away. That's different." Thunder's tail wagged. "You're taking their side." The dog's expression suggested that Ryan was missing the point. The trial began 6 weeks later. It was held in a federal courthouse 2 hours from Millbrook, a change of venue requested by the prosecution to ensure an unbiased jury. The Caldwell family's influence didn't reach this far. Vincent Caldwell looked nothing like the arrogant man who had run down Harold Bennett. His hair had thinned. His face was gaunt. The expensive suits had been replaced by jail-issue clothing that hung loose on his frame. He sat at the defendant's table like a man who had already been found guilty, his eyes hollow with the knowledge of what was coming. His brother Michael sat beside him. The former district attorney had aged a decade in 6 weeks. The man who had suppressed investigations and buried evidence now faced the full weight of the system he had corrupted. Harold was the first witness called. Ryan watched from the gallery as the old man was wheeled to the witness stand, his legs still healing, his body still broken, but his spirit undefeated. "Mr. Bennett," the prosecutor began, "can you describe the events of October 15th? "I can." Harold's voice was clear, strong. "My wife and I were walking home from church. We were on the sidewalk, not the road, the sidewalk, when I saw headlights behind us, coming fast, too fast. What did you do?" "I pushed Margaret. I didn't think, I just acted. And then the car hit me." "Can you describe the impact?" "I remember flying. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how I die. And then I was on the ground, and everything hurt, and I could hear my wife screaming." "What happened next?" Harold's eyes moved to Vincent Caldwell. "He got out of his car, the defendant. He was drunk. I could smell it from where I was lying. And instead of helping us, instead of calling 911, he started screaming at us, blaming us for his accident." "Did he touch you?" "He hit me. Twice." Harold's voice hardened. "I was lying on the ground with a broken leg and a bleeding head, and he hit me." "What about your wife?" "He grabbed her, shook her, and then he raised his hand to—" Harold stopped, composed himself. That's when Commander Mitchell arrived. "Can you describe what Commander Mitchell did?" "He stopped it. He walked up behind that man, caught his hand, and said, 'That's enough.' No shouting, no violence, just absolute certainty." Harold looked toward Ryan in the gallery. "I've lived 70 years, and I've never seen courage like that. Not in war movies, not in stories. Real courage, in a real moment, when it mattered most." The courtroom was silent. "One more question, Mr. Bennett." The prosecutor's voice was gentle. "Why are you testifying today? After everything you've been through, the injuries, the threats, the attempts to silence you, why are you here?" Harold sat up straighter in his wheelchair. "Because I'm 70 years old. I've lived a good life. I've loved a good woman. I've taught thousands of students and watched them grow into good people." His voice strengthened with each word. "But if I stayed silent, if I let men like Vincent Caldwell get away with hurting people, then what was any of it for? What does a good life mean if you won't stand up when it matters?" He turned to look directly at Vincent. You tried to kill me. You tried to hurt my wife. You tried to bury the truth. But you failed. Harold's voice rang through the courtroom. Because truth doesn't stay buried. Because good people don't stay silent.
And because sometimes, God sends exactly the right person at exactly the right moment.
The prosecution rested. Margaret testified next. She was smaller than Harold, frailer in appearance, but her voice carried the same steel. He grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises, she said. He called me names I won't repeat. And when I tried to help my husband, he shoved me against the car. Were you afraid? More afraid than I've ever been in my life. Margaret's eyes glistened. We were helpless. Harold couldn't move. I couldn't fight back. The police weren't coming. And this man, this angry, drunk man, was going to kill us because we'd had the audacity to exist in the wrong place at the wrong time. What saved you? Margaret looked at Ryan. A stranger. A man I'd never met who had no reason to help us, who risked everything to protect two people he'd never seen before. Her voice broke. I spent 70 years believing that there was good in the world. That night, I almost lost that belief. Commander Mitchell gave it back to me. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal, but ineffective. He tried to suggest that Harold and Margaret had been jaywalking. The security footage proved otherwise. He tried to suggest that Vincent wasn't truly intoxicated. The blood alcohol results, obtained by federal investigators who hadn't been bought, showed he was nearly twice the legal limit. He tried to suggest that Ryan had used excessive force, but there was no force to show. Only words. Only presence. Only the calm authority of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. By the third day of testimony, the defense was grasping at straws. By the fifth day, they were negotiating plea deals. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Vincent Caldwell, vehicular assault, DUI, assault and battery, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice. Sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Michael Caldwell, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, corruption of public office. Sentenced to 12 years. Deputy Frank Morrison, corruption, conspiracy, falsifying police reports. Sentenced to 5 years, reduced for his cooperation. 6 other officers received sentences ranging from 2 to 8 years. The Caldwell Development Corporation was dissolved. Its assets were seized and distributed to victims of the family's decades of corruption. And in a small courtroom filled with people who had refused to stay silent, justice was finally served. Ryan wasn't there for the verdict. He was at the hospice, holding his mother's hand. Eleanor Mitchell died 3 days after the Caldwell verdict. It was peaceful, the nurses said. She went in her sleep, holding her son's hand, with Thunder lying at the foot of her bed. Her last words were, "I'm proud of you, Ryan. I've always been proud of you." Ryan stayed with her for an hour after she was gone. He didn't cry, not yet. That would come later, in private, when the world wasn't watching. But he felt something shift inside him, a door closing, a chapter, and his mother was gone. The mission was complete. Now he had to figure out what came next. The funeral was small. Eleanor had wanted it that way. Family friends, a few neighbors, the hospice staff who had cared for her in her final weeks. And, unexpectedly, Harold and Margaret Bennett. They arrived in George Carter's truck, Harold still in his wheelchair, Margaret walking beside him with the careful grace of a woman who had learned not to take any step for granted. "We hope we're not intruding," Margaret said when she saw Ryan. "But your mother, we wanted to pay our respects." "How did you even know?" "Small town. Word travels. Margaret touched his arm. She raised a good man, Commander Mitchell. A mother like that deserves to be honored. Harold wheeled himself forward. I only met her once, he said. At the hospital, after everything happened. She was already sick then, but she took my hand and said— His voice caught. She said, "Take care of my boy. He carries too much alone." Ryan felt his composure crack. She always worried about me. Mothers do, Margaret smiled through her tears. It's the job. They stood together at the graveside, an unlikely family brought together by violence and bound by something stronger. Thunder sat at Ryan's feet, quiet and watchful, understanding in the way animals do that some pain has no cure. The pastor spoke words about eternal rest and heavenly reward. Ryan barely heard them. He was thinking about his mother, about her strength and her sacrifice, about the way she had raised him to be someone who stood up, who showed up, who refused to look away. He was thinking about the Bennetts, about their 50 years of love and their courage in the face of cruelty. He was thinking about Thunder, about 6 years of partnership, of loyalty, of a bond that transcended words. And he was thinking about what came next. The service ended. People drifted away with murmured condolences. Harold and Margaret lingered. What will you do now? Harold asked. With the trial over, your mother at peace, what comes next? Ryan looked at Thunder, at the sky, at the freshly turned earth that held his mother's body. I don't know, he admitted. For so long, there was always a mission, a purpose, something to fight for. He shook his head. Now I'm not sure. Margaret stepped forward. Her small hand took his. You gave us our lives back, she said. You gave us our faith back. You showed us that good still exists in a world that sometimes feels like it's drowning in darkness. She squeezed his hand. Maybe now it's time for someone to give something back to you. What do you mean? Come to dinner. Tomorrow night. Our house. Nothing fancy, just food and conversation and people who care about you. You don't have to. We want to. Harold's voice was firm. You're family now, Commander, whether you like it or not. Ryan looked at them, this elderly couple who had survived the worst and emerged with their love intact, who had refused to be silenced, who had stood up when it would have been easier to stay down. Okay, he said. Tomorrow night. Margaret's face lit up. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. They left him standing at his mother's grave, thunder pressed against his leg. The sun was setting. The air was cool. The world was quiet. Ryan knelt beside the headstone. I did it, Mom, he whispered. I stayed. I fought. I won. The wind stirred the grass. It felt almost like an answer. I don't know what comes next, but I'll figure it out. He touched the cold stone. I'll make you proud, every day, for the rest of my life. Thunder whined softly. I know, boy. I know. Ryan stood, straightened his shoulders, looked toward the horizon where the last light of day was fading. His mother was gone, but her lessons remained. Stand up. Show up. Stay. That was the legacy she had left him. That was the mission that would never end. Dinner at the Bennett house was nothing like Ryan expected. He arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, Thunder at his heel, wearing civilian clothes that felt strange after weeks of living in uniforms and tactical gear. Margaret opened the door before he could knock. You're early, her eyes sparkled. I like that. Maybe habit. Early is on time. On time is late. Well, come in before the roast gets cold. Harold's been telling everyone you were coming. Everyone? Margaret's smile widened mysteriously. Ryan stepped inside and stopped. The small living room was full of people. George Carter stood by the fireplace, a beer in his hand and a grin on his weathered face. Patricia Reyes sat on the couch, out of uniform for once, looking almost relaxed. Two nurses from the hospice, women who had cared for Eleanor in her final weeks, clustered near the kitchen. And in the corner, in his wheelchair with a blanket over his healing leg, Harold Bennett presided over everything like a silver-haired king. "Surprise," Harold said dryly. "What is this?" "A thank you party," Margaret ushered him further inside. "We wanted to do something proper, something that showed you what you mean to us." You don't get to decide what we need to give." Harold's voice was firm. "You spent weeks fighting for us. Let us spend one evening celebrating you." Thunder had already made himself at home, accepting pets from the hospice nurses with dignified tolerance. George Carter approached with a second beer. "Hell of a thing you did, Commander. Hell of a thing." "You helped. The footage." "I handed over a thumb drive. You brought down an empire." George clinked his bottle against Ryan's. "Don't diminish what you did. Men like us don't take credit well, but sometimes we need to accept it." Patricia joined them. "He's right, you know. The FBI has been trying to nail the Caldwells for years. You did in weeks what we couldn't do in a decade. I had help. You had courage. The rest was details." Dinner was roast beef and potatoes and vegetables from Harold's garden. The garden he had been planning to expand with more tomatoes, before a drunk driver's Mercedes changed everything. They sat around a table too small for so many people, shoulders touching, warmth spreading. Thunder lay under Ryan's chair, accepting scraps that Margaret pretended not to notice. "Tell us about your mother," Harold said after the plates were cleared. "Eleanor. What was she like?" Ryan felt his throat tighten. "She was everything. After my father died, she raised me alone, worked 2 jobs, never complained, never made me feel like I was a burden. She sounds strong. Strongest person I ever knew." Ryan stared at his empty plate. Even at the end, when the cancer was eating her from the inside, she never stopped being my mother. Never stopped worrying about me. Never stopped believing that I could do anything I set my mind to. Margaret reached across the table and took his hand. "She was right," Margaret said softly. "You can do anything. You proved that. I just did what needed to be done. That's what heroes always say." Harold leaned forward. "But here's the thing, Commander. Most people see what needs to be done and walk away. They tell themselves it's someone else's problem, someone else's fight. They convince themselves that nothing they do would make a difference anyway." "I'm not a hero." "You're exactly a hero, because heroes aren't people who feel no fear. Heroes are people who feel the fear and act anyway." Harold's eyes were bright with conviction. "You stood in front of a drunk man twice your size. You faced down corrupt police. You took on one of the most powerful families in this state. And you did it for strangers, for people you'd never met before that night." "Anyone would have—" "No," Patricia's voice cut through. "They wouldn't. I've been in law enforcement for 20 years. I've seen 1,000 people look the other way. I've seen witnesses develop amnesia. I've seen good people convince themselves that silence is safer than truth." She met his eyes. "What you did is rare, Ryan. Accept it." The room fell quiet. Thunder shifted under the chair, pressing closer to Ryan's legs. "I keep thinking about that night," Ryan said slowly. "About what would have happened if I'd taken a different route. If I'd been 5 minutes earlier or later. If I'd just kept driving." "But you didn't," Margaret squeezed his hand. "God put you exactly where you needed to be." "I'm not sure I believe in God." "That's okay.
He believes in you."
Ryan looked at her. This 70-year-old woman who had survived violence and betrayal and the near death of her husband, who sat here now in her small house, surrounded by people who cared about her, with faith still shining in her eyes. "How do you do it?" he asked. "After everything that happened, how do you still believe?" "Because of you." Margaret's voice was simple, certain. "Because when we were at our lowest, when everything seemed lost, a stranger appeared. A man with a good heart and a loyal dog walked out of the darkness and said, 'That's enough.'" She smiled through her tears. "If that's not proof of something greater, I don't know what is." After dinner, Ryan found himself on the Bennett's back porch, staring at the stars. Thunder lay beside him, nose resting on his paws. The dog's eyes were half closed, but his ears remained alert, always listening, always ready. The door opened behind him. Harold wheeled himself onto the porch. "Escaping the crowd?" "Just needed some air." "Mind if I join you?" "It's your porch." Harold positioned his wheelchair beside Ryan's chair. For a moment, neither spoke. The night sounds of suburbia surrounded them. Distant traffic, a neighbor's television, a dog barking 3 houses over. "I've been thinking," Harold said finally, "about what happens next. For all of us. The trial's over. The Caldwells are in prison. What else is there?" "That's exactly what I mean." Harold turned to face him. "You spent months fighting for us. You lost your mother. You put your life on hold for strangers." His voice softened. "What do you do now?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. The question had been haunting him since his mother's funeral. "I don't know," he admitted. "I'm on leave for another 2 months. After that, I have orders to report to Virginia Beach. New assignment." "Do you want to go?" "It's not about want. It's about duty." "Duty to whom?" The question surprised Ryan. He looked at Harold, really looked at the old man who had pushed his wife out of the path of the speeding car, who had taken the hit himself, who had refused to stay silent even when everything told him to. "To my country, my team." "And what about your duty to yourself?" Ryan had no answer. "My father was military," Harold said. "Korea. He came back different. Spent the rest of his life serving causes that weren't his own because he didn't know how to serve himself." Harold's voice was gentle. "I watched him fade. Not all at once, gradually, year by year, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a uniform and a sense of obligation." "What happened to him?" "Heart attack. 62 years old. Alone in his apartment." Harold's eyes glistened. He never learned that duty to others has to include duty to yourself, that you can't pour from an empty cup. "I'm not empty." "Not yet, but you're getting there." Harold reached out and gripped Ryan's arm. "You've given so much, Commander, to your country, to your team, to us. Maybe it's time to figure out what you want to receive." Thunder lifted his head and looked at Ryan, as if endorsing Harold's words. "I don't know how to stop," Ryan said quietly. "Fighting is all I know." "Then find something worth fighting for. Something that fills you up instead of draining you." Harold released his arm. "You're 35 years old. You have decades ahead of you. Don't spend them all running toward danger just because you're afraid of what happens when you stop." Ryan stayed at the Bennetts until almost midnight. They talked about everything and nothing. About Eleanor's life and Harold's teaching career. About Margaret's years as a choir director and Thunder's training. About the small moments that made up a life and the large ones that defined it. When he finally left, Margaret pressed something into his hands. "What's this?" "A key," she smiled, "to our house. Your family now, whether you like it or not."
That means you always have a place to come home to.
Ryan stared at the small piece of metal. It weighed almost nothing, but it felt heavier than anything he'd carried in years. "I can't accept you already have." Harold wheeled himself forward. "The door is always open, Commander. For you and Thunder both." "Harold, no arguments." The old man's voice was firm. "You gave us back our lives. The least we can do is give you a place to rest when you're tired." Ryan tucked the key into his pocket. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." "Thank you." Margaret hugged him, a quick, fierce embrace that reminded him of his mother. "For showing us that good still wins sometimes." He drove back to his motel in silence. Thunder sat in the passenger seat, watching the road with the patience of a creature who had learned that some journeys had no clear destination. "What do you think, boy?" Ryan asked. "What do we do now?" Thunder's tail wagged once. It wasn't an answer, but it felt like acknowledgement. 3 weeks later, Ryan made his decision. He stood in the office of Rear Admiral James Morrison, no relation to the corrupt deputy, and delivered news that surprised everyone, including himself. "I'm requesting a discharge." The Admiral studied him for a long moment. "You're one of the best SEALs I've ever commanded. Why would you want to leave?" "Because I've given 15 years to the teams. I've done everything that was asked of me, and more." Ryan met the Admiral's eyes. "But I've also missed funerals, missed birthdays, missed the last months of my mother's life, because there was always one more mission, one more deployment, one more enemy to fight." "That's the job." "I know, and I've done the job well. But maybe it's time to do something else." Ryan paused. "There are enemies here at home, Admiral. Corruption, injustice, people who prey on the vulnerable and think their money makes them untouchable. You want to fight that? I want to make sure that when a drunk driver runs over an elderly couple, someone is there to stop him. I want to make sure that when powerful people try to bury the truth, someone is there to dig it up." Ryan's voice strengthened. "I can't do that from a base in Virginia Beach. I can't do that with deployment orders and chain of command and the 1,000 obligations that come with this uniform." The Admiral was quiet for a long time. "The Caldwell case," he said finally, "that changed you. It reminded me why I started fighting in the first place. Not for medals or mission reports. For people. For the ones who can't fight for themselves." "And you think you can do more good as a civilian?" "I think I can try." The Admiral stood, extended his hand. "I'll approve the discharge. Honorable, obviously, with every commendation you've earned." He gripped Ryan's hand firmly. "You've served with distinction, Commander. Whatever you do next, know that your country is grateful." "Thank you, sir." "And Ryan?" "Sir? Don't lose yourself out there. The world needs people like you, but only if you're whole." Ryan nodded. "I'll do my best." He walked out of the Admiral's office with Thunder at his heel. For the first time in 15 years, he wasn't a sailor. He was just a man with a dog and a key to a house that wasn't his own. It felt terrifying. It felt right. Ryan returned to Millbrook in the spring. The town had changed in subtle ways. New streetlights had been installed along the roads. A memorial garden had been planted at the corner where Harold was hit. The police department had been reformed from the ground up. New leadership, new policies, new accountability. But some things remained the same. Harold and Margaret still walked home from church every Sunday. They moved slower now, Harold with a cane, Margaret with her arm through his. But they walked. They refused to let fear steal their ritual. George Carter still maintained his security cameras. He had become something of a local celebrity, the gruff Marine whose footage had brought down the Caldwell Empire. He handled the attention with typical grace, mostly by glaring at anyone who mentioned it, and thunder still bounded toward the Bennett house every time Ryan's truck appeared, his tail wagging with the pure joy of a creature who had found his pack. Ryan had taken the key Margaret gave him and done something unexpected with it. He bought the house next door. "You're not serious," Harold said when he heard. "As a heart attack." "But why? You could go anywhere, do anything." "I could." Ryan looked at the small house, at the garden that needed tending, at the porch that needed painting. "But I want to be here, with people who became family when I wasn't looking." Margaret hugged him so hard he couldn't breathe. "Welcome home," she whispered. Home. The word felt foreign on Ryan's tongue. He had spent so long moving from base to base, mission to mission, that the concept had become abstract. Home was where the Navy sent you. Home was temporary. Home was something other people had. But now, standing in the spring sunshine with thunder at his side and neighbors who had become family, Ryan understood something he had been missing for years. Home wasn't a place. Home was the people who chose you. And these people had chosen him. 1 year after the accident, the town of Millbrook held a ceremony. It was Margaret's idea, a way to honor the people who had fought for justice, and to remind everyone that truth had won. The gathering was small but meaningful. George Carter was there, looking uncomfortable in a suit he clearly hadn't worn in decades. Patricia Reyes had flown in from Washington. The hospice nurses came. Even Deputy Morrison attended, looking older and smaller than Ryan remembered, but present, doing his community service by helping organize the event. Harold spoke first. "1 year ago, my wife and I were walking home from church. It was a beautiful evening, quiet, peaceful, the kind of evening you think will last forever." His voice was steady, but his eyes were bright with emotion. And then a car came out of nowhere, and everything changed. He paused. "I spent weeks in the hospital, weeks in physical therapy, weeks learning to walk again with a leg that would never be the same." Harold gripped his cane. "But I also spent weeks witnessing something I thought I'd lost faith in. I witnessed courage. I witnessed sacrifice. I witnessed ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they believed that truth mattered." His gaze found Ryan in the crowd. Commander Mitchell, Ryan, could have driven past that night. He could have called 911 and let someone else handle it. He could have decided that 2 old people weren't worth the risk. Harold's voice cracked. But he didn't. He stopped. He stood between us and violence. He gave us back our lives. Margaret stepped forward, taking her husband's arm. "We're not here to celebrate what happened," she said. "We're here to remember what it taught us. That evil is real, but so is goodness. That power can corrupt, but truth can overcome. That when one person stands up, others find the courage to stand with them." She looked at the memorial garden, at the flowers blooming where violence had once occurred. "This is what we built from our worst night. Beauty from ashes, hope from despair. A reminder that no matter how dark things get, light finds a way through." Ryan was invited to speak, but he declined. Instead, he stood in the back with Thunder, watching the community that had adopted him gather around the people he had helped save. Patricia found him there. "Not one for speeches? Not one for attention." "Funny. For someone who doesn't like attention, you've gotten a lot of it." Ryan shrugged. "I just did what needed to be done. Other people made it important." "That's the thing about heroism." Patricia leaned against the wall beside him. "The hero never sees it that way. It's always just what needed to be done. But the people who are saved, they see it differently." "I'm not a hero." "You keep saying that," Patricia smiled. Maybe someday you'll believe it. But until then, let me tell you what I see. I see a man who gave up his career to fight corruption, who lost his mother while saving strangers, who bought a house next to two elderly people he barely knew because he couldn't stand the thought of them facing the world alone. That's not heroism. That's just, it's love, Ryan. Patricia's voice softened. That's what heroism is. Love in action. Putting yourself in harm's way because someone else's life matters more to you than your own comfort. Thunder pressed against Ryan's leg. Even your dog knows it, Patricia added. Look at him. He followed you into everything. The confrontation, the investigation, the danger. Because he loves you. And you took him into all of it because you love him back. Ryan looked down at Thunder. The German shepherd's amber eyes met his with the steady devotion that had sustained him through the hardest year of his life. Yeah, Ryan said quietly. I guess I do. The ceremony ended as the sun set. People drifted home, back to their lives, back to the ordinary routines that made up a community. The memorial garden stood quiet now, its flowers swaying gently in the evening breeze. Ryan stayed behind. He walked to the spot where Harold had fallen, where blood had stained the grass, where a man's body had been broken by arrogance and alcohol, and the casual cruelty of the privileged. Thunder walked beside him, patient and present. I never told you why I was driving that way, Ryan said quietly to the darkness. That night, why I was on that road at that exact moment. Thunder tilted his head. I was coming from the hospice. Mom had just told me she was ready to die, that she wanted me to stop fighting and let her go. Ryan's voice cracked. I was so angry. At God, at the universe, at whatever force had decided that the one person who had always believed in me deserved to die in pain. He knelt beside the flowers. I wanted to keep driving forever, to outrun the grief that was waiting for me, to pretend that if I never stopped moving, nothing could catch me. A tear slid down his cheek. And then I saw the headlights, saw the impact, saw Margaret screaming and Harold bleeding, and a drunk man raising his hand to hit a 70-year-old woman. Ryan touched the earth. And suddenly I knew why I was there. Not by accident. By design. Thunder pressed his head against Ryan's shoulder. My mother told me once that grief and purpose are woven together, that the deepest pain points us toward the deepest meaning. Ryan stood slowly. She was right. She usually was. He looked at the stars beginning to appear overhead. I don't know if there's a God, Mom. I don't know if you can hear me. But if you can, thank you. For raising me to be someone who stops. Someone who stands. Someone who believes that one person can make a difference. The wind stirred the flowers. It felt like an answer. Ryan walked home in the gathering darkness. Home. The word still surprised him sometimes. But not tonight. Tonight it felt exactly right. Margaret was on her porch, as she often was in the evenings. Harold sat beside her, a blanket over his legs, watching the stars the way he had watched them for 70 years. Nice night, Harold called out. It is. Come sit with us. Ryan walked across the lawn that separated their houses. Thunder bounded ahead, greeting Margaret with the enthusiasm of a puppy in a dog's body. How are you holding up? Margaret asked. Better, day by day. That's how it works. She scratched behind Thunder's ears. Day by day, until suddenly you realize you've built a life out of moments you thought would break you. Ryan settled into the empty chair on their porch. 3 people and a dog, sitting in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen around them. Harold, Ryan said eventually, can I ask you something? Anything. That night, when you saw the car coming, why did you push Margaret instead of yourself? Why didn't you try to save yourself?" Harold was quiet for a long moment. "Because I've loved her for 50 years," he said simply. "And in 50 years, you learn that some things are more important than survival. Some people are more important than everything." Margaret took her husband's hand.
"I would have done the same for him," she said. "Any day, any moment, without hesitation."
"That's what love is," Harold added. "Not poetry or passion or grand gestures, just the quiet certainty that this person, this one person out of all the billions on earth, matters more to you than you matter to yourself." Ryan looked at Thunder, at the dog who had followed him into danger countless times, who had stood between him and violence without being asked, who had been his companion through the darkest year of his life. "Yeah," Ryan said. "I think I understand." They sat together until the stars filled the sky. Three people who had found each other through violence and chosen to become family. One dog who had never stopped believing his human was worth protecting. And one truth that had emerged from the darkness, bright and undeniable. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the foundation for the best. Sometimes strangers become family. Sometimes one man with a dog can change everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice prevails. Not because the world is fair, not because the powerful face automatic consequences, but because somewhere, in every generation, there are people who refuse to look away, who stand when it would be easier to kneel, who speak when silence would be safer. They are not perfect. They are not fearless. They are not special in any way that can be measured or predicted. They are simply people who decided that truth matters more than comfort, that courage matters more than safety, that love matters more than everything. And on a quiet Virginia evening, with the stars overhead and family beside him, Ryan Mitchell finally understood what his mother had tried to teach him his entire life. The world doesn't change because heroes exist. The world changes because ordinary people choose to be heroic. One moment at a time, one choice at a time, one stand at a time. If this story has touched your heart, remember that you carry the same power. You can be the one who stops. You can be the one who speaks. You can be the one who stands between cruelty and its target. All it takes is the decision that some things are worth fighting for. Comment your city below. Tell us your pet's name. Share this with someone who needs to know that courage still exists. And may God bless you with the strength to stand when standing is hard, with the wisdom to see when seeing is painful, and with the love to act when action costs everything. Because that is what changes the world. Not power, not money, not position. Just ordinary people making extraordinary choices. One heart at a time. One moment at a time. One hero at a time.